Hey guys, Morgan's Maintenance. Today's video, I'm going to go over how I converted my old 20 by 20, what used to be a carport that was converted into a garage that you can see here, into this 30 by 40. It looks like one building from the outside, but it's actually a couple different buildings all within the one. I kept my old building inside of here. So I'm going to share with you the process. I didn't really film stuff in 100% way while I was building this thing because it was only me and a buddy. And you know, we're doing it outside of our regular jobs. So we just had to film when we could. I did a lot of time lapse. I did some after the fact. So I'm just going to walk through those and do a voiceover to show you the process from start to this point right here where I'm kind of probably 90% dried in. And then whenever I'm done with that, I'm going to go through and do a walkthrough where I'm at right now, how I plan to use this, and those kinds of things like that for those of you out there that's been asking questions. But let's go ahead and jump into how I got to this point. So here is the original building. Again, it is a 20 by 20, one of those carports with just a metal roof and the metal poles. The previous owner had put the sides and the windows on before I moved here, and then whenever I moved in, I put on that front with the garage door and the man door. This is my 1986, I think it is, Gale skid steer. Picked this up here recently this year. I absolutely wouldn't have been able to do this job without it. I picked it up knowing I was going to do this job, but I've also always wanted one of these. I got a really good deal on it, and I needed one around my property just to do all kinds of things. I mean, just even moving mulch and stuff, it's a big time saver, or at least a big back saver. So I'm trying to level this out back here in the back just to see how far I'm going to have to dig down, see what I'm going to end up having to do. Again, I couldn't tie into the existing slab of my original building because it is on a significant slope, because it was originally a carport and they poured that slab so that the water would run off whenever cars were parked on it. So here it is after kind of my first day, or my first starting to move the dirt. I also took out some concrete on the side of my building, got out all the landscape. It started raining on me, so I had to quit at this point. I did end up taking a little bit more out as well. Then we started digging footers. I had to dig footers by hand because my plumber was going to bring his mini excavator, and he got really, really sick and was in the hospital. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead and start by hand. You can see my soft hands there got kind of damaged in the process. So I had to go in and get the tough one, missed maintenance out. Bought this Bauer SDS Max hammer drill specifically for this. I went to Harbor Freight and picked it up. So she was chiseling and breaking loose all the dirt and the rock. And then I would take the shovel, get it out of the hole, put it into the skid steer bucket, and then drive that bucket and dump those. And this was not only hard work, but it was so hot. It was like the hottest time of the year. We've got fans blowing on us out there. Whatever we could do to possibly stay cool, and just a ton of dirt that we moved. You'll be able to see the pile here in just a second. And that's not even all of it. I mean, that's part of what I dug out for the actual pad part itself, and then also what we've been digging for footers. But you can see my white lines up there. We're not even close to being done with digging the footers out. So we ended up with quite a bit of dirt. So this is kind of where me and Miss Maintenance stopped after, I think, 2 days. And then we got a rainstorm. And you can see the footers got filled up, and we couldn't have been more depressed because after I got out there and started pumping the water out, lots of fine dirt, almost like a powder, had kind of fallen into the footers and completely filled them back up. So I was like, man, we're going to have to dig this out again. And then what if we don't get the concrete poured and it rains again? So we ended up getting all the footers dug, got it dug out pretty well. I think I've got a measurement here. I'm somewhere between 14 and 18 inches deep, just depending upon, where I dug at and what I hit. And I went around and put these pins in one night. I went around with my laser, used some nails and some ribbon to mark, and then we started pouring the footers. But it's a really easy pour. Once you get those pins and ribbons in place, you just pretty much let gravity and the flow of it do its thing. Just fill it up to the ribbon and then go around and maybe push it up and down a little bit to make sure it's all leveled out. And me and Miss Maintenance were super happy to see this site right here, because we knew if it rained again, we might have to get some mud off the footers, but at least we weren't going to be dealing with like digging the whole entire footer out again, because we just were absolutely sick of digging at that point. So here I'm just showing you after it kind of cured a little bit, I went around and marked the corners and got everything squared off and all that kind of stuff, and went ahead and chalked it because I'm going to have somebody lay the block, but I always like to go ahead and do like, here's where I want you to put it, whenever they come, instead of hoping somebody's going to lay it out right and all that kind of stuff. I try to make it dummy proof, even though the company that's going to be doing the block, they're people that we've had do work for us before as far as on my jobs. and you know, they always do a good job. I wasn't really worried about it, but I just basically went around and set all the corners. So the block people couldn't get out there right away. So while I was waiting on them, I went ahead and dug a trench for my electrical conduit and data and got that put in. Got that tape put in there as well. And then my block got delivered. So now once those showed up, I called the guys and said, it's out here, come when you can. And they came out and knocked it out, you know, pretty quick. They would have got done in one day, but I ended up being a few blocks short, and they had to come back, which they're the one who told me how many blocks to get. So that's not on me, but nevertheless, they did a really good job. Everything turned out exactly like I liked. And Miss Maintenance went around and put some of that foundation coating on there for me. Me and her did that one day. But basically, we're ready now to start pouring concrete. So I formed up all the concrete on the two sides and also did all the preparation and all that kind of stuff. And then me and one of my friends poured the two sides. We just finished those by hand because they're going to be storage spaces. I didn't really care, but I did have a buddy of mine. He is a concrete finisher, or he basically owns a concrete company. He allowed me to use all his pins and all that kind of stuff for everything I did. And then I also had him come out and finish like my main slab. So that's what you can kind of see right here. And then there is the overall finish. I went ahead and went and put sealer on things, so that's why you're seeing that shininess there. And again, I just finished that side there. I did that by hand. It's just going to be storage shelves. I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on making it like 100% beautiful. It's basically going to be like a closet. It still looks pretty good in person. After I got the slabs pour, I started digging out for my drainage pipe. I got that put in. That's not the final grade. I wanted it flat while I was doing work, so I will be making more of a kind of pitch right there. And then lumber started showing up. Well, at this point, I'm just now learning how to use the time lapse on my DJI. So here we're setting the bottom plates, and I thought I had it set right, but the camera cut off after like 2 or 3 minutes. I went to check it and it was off. And then here I changed those settings, and then I made it to where like 5 hours worth of work was 3 seconds. So I had to slow that down quite a bit. So you're just going to kind of get like little still frames of the process of framing these walls right here. And then after this point, I finally start to figure out how to use my DJI and how to set the time lapse. But here we're framing the walls, basically the exterior walls. And then now I'm on the other side. This is the next day. And I finally, again, have figured out the time lapse a little bit. We are studding these up one stud at a time because specifically more so just on concrete and block, which actually everything was pretty well flat because we formed it up and we poured everything. The block guys did a super job. Most everything was pretty much the same, but it's just a lot easier in my opinion with two guys and the limited space that we had. We'd have had to build these things on the dirt pretty much to stand them up, and it's just as fast to me to just sit there and put your top plates on, go around, put your studs in, and just frame it up this way. It just worked out that way for us. So now here we've moved over to kind of the garage door opening, and that's a lot taller section. So now we're having to reach up to that 12 foot. We've got 48 inches of block, 8-foot studs, and we're having to get like all that framing up there. And then now we're also going to put in a header. I ended up using 3 2x12s, which was pretty much overkill for that 10x10 opening, but I had them on site. I wasn't going to use them for anything else, so I'm just like, that's going to flush it out a little bit better. So that's what I ended up using here. Now I moved over, or at least I moved the camera. It's still the same day. We just going around putting in the window headers, and now I think I'm doing the double top plate. Just going around and getting that second row top plate, tying the two walls on the corners together, all that kind of stuff like that. Then I forgot to start with the zip sheathing. We already got the rest of it zip sheathed, but you see this side, you would have seen the rest of it. The only difference is right now we're using screws to put this on, and that's because I was using the Milwaukee M18 framing nailer to put this on with some 21 degree, some galvanized ring shank nails, and I bought 1,000 pack of the Metabo to try them out in the Milwaukee gun to make sure they were going to work. And I ran out of them on all the other sheathing, so now we're using screws just to finish up this side. And I ordered more of those nails. They did work out fairly well. So the nail gun was definitely a lot faster than putting in the screws like what we're doing here. But while we were working on the sheathing, the truss company pulled in with the trusses to drop them off. Really good driver right here, super nice guy. So I think I had 21 trusses in total, if I remember right. I think I have maybe 22, but I think it was 10 scissor trusses and 11 flat trusses. Scissor trusses to go over my old building, flat trusses for the new section and for the front porchish type area. So that's what he's delivering here. Once he pulled off, we were finishing up the sheathing, and I'm taking a router and going out and routing out the windows, only because we were supposed to be getting a pretty bad windstorm, and I was trying to figure out, do I think it's better or worse to have the holes open or blocked off? We had everything kind of braced off, but we were supposed to get a really severe windstorm, so I was afraid we'd get a lot of racking. So I decided I was going to go ahead and cut those holes just to let air go through there. That could have been a bad decision. I don't know, but that's what I decided to do. And this is just an overview of everything framed up, everything zip sheathed, and now you can see the trusses there. That's what we're going to start working on next. So we were bringing the trusses over. They weren't super heavy. I think they were like 150 pounds a piece, and it was a pretty wide truss to drive it over there. So we ended up just picking up each individual one and carrying it over, putting it on the skid steer and lifting it up. I have some forks. I don't have fork attachment that goes on my actual skid steer, but I've got some forks that you clamp onto the bucket, which actually probably worked out better in this case because it allowed me to get a little bit farther away from the building. And we were, back and forth on how are we going to get these trusses up here, but this actually worked out fairly well. Able to lift them up with the skid steer. He would get up there, pull them off. I would go over to the sides and get the location of it right as far as on the top plate, get them screwed in, and then we just keep repeating that process over and over again. Again, these are scissor trusses going over the older red building so that it's got kind of that pitch in it to go over top of that gable on that roof. And every time I'm handing it up there to him, I'm taking some 2x4s, going over to my miter saw, cutting the spacing blocks and stuff like that, throwing them up to him, and then I'm kind of going back and forth with the skid steer, putting screws in. He's up there bracing everything off. Again, we're just a two-man show, so a lot of times you would have more people on this, so sometimes it took a little bit longer, but we were able to get it done. Then once we got this one on, that's the last of the scissor truss, and now I'm going to start on that little bump out, kind of like a covered porch, and purposely I'm putting that on this building so that whenever rain comes in, it doesn't hit the top of my garage door, the top of my man door, and cause those, jams and all that kind of stuff to go bad. So now we're swapping over to some flat trusses. Those are spanning over on some 2x12s that are doubled up and cantilevered out of the building. They run back into the building, I think 5 feet, coming out 4 feet. And I'm also going to be putting 2 posts underneath those as well, even though I don't feel like they probably even need posts, but we're going to do that. So this is the last of the flat truss, except for the actual final gable end. and we were still discussing all throughout this process how we're going to get that gable end up there, because we really wanted to sheath it, which is what we're going to be doing here. We wanted to sheath it. We wanted to put on the fly rafters, all that stuff, and then still lift it up there into place. So we started the process of getting everything on there here at this point. But at the end of this day, we just decide we'll sleep on it. We were both tired anyways, and we're going to start on this gable truss tomorrow and get all the stuff put on there and figure out, maybe we'll come up with something while we sleep on it type thing to see how we're going to get it up there. So here's where we left it that day. So we got quite a few trusses on. We thought it was a pretty good day anyways. We basically got all the scissor trusses on, and now we're moving on to the flat truss. So the next day comes, we get everything zip sheathed. We've also got like a 14-inch hang down on that zip sheathing so that it will be part of that porch area. And now we're just going on and putting those fly rafters on. Also don't have the 2x6s for the fascia yet. But I've got an order of material coming. You'll actually see it pop in here in just a little bit off to the side. And once it gets there, I got some 18-foot 2x6s that we're cutting the angle on, getting those put on and installed. But after we get the fly rafters and the fascia and all that stuff on, it's time for the moment of truth. Is the skid steer one going to lift it up that high? Because again, I have it forks clamped onto my bucket, so it's got me extended out. It's got my weight a little bit off. We didn't know if it was going to lift it up all the way. But overall, it wasn't too bad. It was a little bit scary. If we didn't have that extra 14-inch of zip hanging down that had to fit like perfectly, so we didn't have room. We had to pretty much get it in there just right. That's the only thing that kind of made it a little bit hard, but nevertheless, kept working at it. You can see Mr. Massey going back and forth like crazy, but we ended up getting it up there. So there you can see all the front trusses are on. Now it's time to move to the flat trusses in the back. This was actually, I think, as far as until we get to that gable end again, these were a little bit easier because we had it set up with kind of like catwalks on both sides to where we just put it up there, moved it across, lifted it up. This was a little bit easier than, my buddy going back and forth across the old building on my old, that old little metal roof that wasn't braced all that well. He was having to drag all those scissor trusses across that. So same thing as before, lifting the truss up, putting the bracing on, lifting the next one up, pushing it against the bracing, screwing it in. Same process over and over again, rinse and repeat. Here we're contemplating how we're going to do these next two trusses, because unlike on the front, and you can't really see it that much in this video, it doesn't look as drastic. The front where my driveway was, that's remotely flat and level. This side over here, that ground slopes quite a bit from the front to the back. So as you have the skid steer, it's on an angle. That means your bucket's on an angle, which means any kind of gable end or anything else that you're going to put up there is going to be on an angle. So we had to kind of rework the forks by building something on there that was unlevel, so that as I got on that unlevel ground, it kind of leveled out my load in a sense. But then we were still wondering the same thing. Is that going to affect the weight? I'm also having to lift it up a little bit higher back here. Is that going to throw me off? So we were unsure how well this was going to work. But again, you're not going to know until you try. So here we're just putting all the sheathing on, the zip tape, all that kind of stuff. I'm over there cutting the fly rafters. Now we're going to pick it up and install those. So that's what we're doing here, is just bracing it off and then installing the fly rafters. Now it's the moment of truth. Picking it up, trying to get lined up as best I can. You can kind of see a little bit how it's still unlevel, but I put those 2x10s hanging out up there so that we could kind of set it on the outside of the building. Worst case scenario, if we could just get it up there, and then we could get up there and pull it into place. But we were able to get it up there. It actually wasn't as bad as I thought. Well, after that day was over, my buddy went home. Miss Maintenance came out with me later that evening. I decided I was going to try to get the fascia put on so that we could start sheathing the next day, because I really was trying to get it sheathed so I could get the roofing company out to put my shingles on so that I could be dried in as far as for my roof. Because now that we've got these trusses and all that stuff up there, I have a lot of it braced off to my old metal building, screw holes in the old metal roof, all that kind of stuff. And then right now, if any rain came down, it's going to hit my old building, run down into those two new side sections, and just basically fill those up. So I was really wanting to get my shingles on before the rain came in, which we weren't supposed to have any for quite a few days. So it was a good opportunity. But thankfully, Miss Maintenance helped me with this. It's definitely not an easy one-man job. So she came out and was just holding stuff whenever I needed it, handed me things. That same evening, we kind of got the fascia done at a decent amount of time. So I showed Miss Maintenance how to do the zip tape and the rolling the tape, and she just started going to town. So that became a job that she liked doing. You can see her going around doing all that. We ended up running out of tape a little bit, and I had to go to town and get some. But for the most part, I think we got done with like 90% of it. I think there was a few little spots where we didn't have enough tape. You always end up using more of that than what you think you're going to use. But here's where we're at after that day of setting the back trusses, that back gable truss. I did the fascia, and then also we did the zip tape. And there you can kind of see that sheathing sitting there, just waiting. That's 5/8 OSB. I was actually wanting to use 5/8 zip sheathing, and then I was going to zip tape it, and then I wouldn't have had to worry about if I could get the guys there to shingle it in time. But I couldn't find any 5/8 zip board anywhere locally. I was going to have to order it. So again, there wasn't any rain in the forecast. So I said, well, let's just use 5/8 OSB, and we can get this on there. The roofing guy said they could come out pretty much the next day after we got done sheathing. So me and my buddy just started going to town, getting that first row set, and then I'm going to get me some blocks set up there so I can start stacking multiple sheets up there instead of just setting one sheet up there at a time. Because my skid steer, again, it's a 1980 something, 86 I think it is. It loses a little bit of hydraulic over the time of just sitting there with the engine off. So I can't just, load up a bunch of OSB on the forks, lift it up, turn it off, and go up there and work, because then over time it's going to slowly drop down. So because of that, we had to figure out a way to keep the OSB up on the roof, which is probably a little bit better because you're not reaching out, to get it off the forks as well. So he's pretty much laying it. I'm down there cutting it for the certain size pieces, and then I'm also loading it up and putting it up there. And then I'm coming back up there and nailing everything off. He's just kind of getting everything set into place. I'm nailing stuff off as he's, figuring out cuts, figuring out measurements. Wasn't too bad using the nail gun on the roof sheathing because that Milwaukee M18 nail gun's pretty heavy, but being that you're kind of just gravity and putting it against almost like a floor, that's nowhere near as bad as holding it out and nailing up some zip sheathing or something like that. It was a very hot day. This was very hard work. Was really glad to be done with it, to be honest with you. In fact, we didn't even get finished. Like, me and my buddy didn't finish that actual day. He ended up going home. I went inside, rested for a little while, and then I came back out a little bit later in the evening when the sun was a little bit down and finished what we didn't get done. But we got the one side done. We started on this side. We probably got it done maybe like 50% or so before he ended up calling it a day. And then I came back out a little bit later and finished up. I didn't film all this because, as you can see, the big tree's in the way. You can't really see it anyways. So after we got the sheathing done, I finished up that night. The next day, whenever he came over, we decided we was going to tackle the front of the building. So this is where, over the course of time, the neighbors, I'm sure, were like, what in the world's this guy doing over there? And then I put the walls up, and they might have been able to see it, especially with the two windows cut in, and thought, okay, I kind of know what he's doing. And then whenever I put the trusses up, I feel like they probably knew a little bit more. But I think this right here, this is what Miss Maintenance was waiting for. She wanted to no longer see the red on that building. And I think this is what kind of makes it, make more sense to people of, oh, it's going to look like one building. But I still think most people think, I bet he's going to take down that building once he builds it. But I need more wall space than I need floor space. So I'd rather keep my building like it is and have two little extra sections, which I'll talk about at the end, for shelving and stuff like that. It's basically a whole nother wall that I'm going to gain. So here we're taking off the old stuff. I'm pulling out the electrical for the sconces that were in there because I'm not going to have those anymore. And then I'm going ahead and pulling that wire up, putting it up into that porch area where I'm going to put some can lights up in there. So I was working on some electrical while he was figuring out layout and doing all that kind of stuff. And now we're starting to cut the sheathing so that we can tie all of it together. I already framed that front wall. Again, like I said, I put on that front of that red building, I added the garage door and the man door. So we basically put all the studs of those new sections in plane with the studs that I put in to this older building originally. And we're just kind of tying that all together now with this zip sheathing. Everything up top, pretty easy cuts. Once I get to the bottom, I've got to do a little bit of angles and this and that because, again, I'm working with the existing slab conditions that were there, and the existing building slab is on a significant slope from right to left because, again, it was a carport, just metal poles and a roof originally. They poured the concrete, so when they had their cars parked on it, it would, all the rainwater would just drain off, but they put a, significant slope on it. So that's what we're getting cut in here. It's not too bad. It's pretty easy. It's on at least the same exact slope, so it's nothing crazy to figure out on the cuts. But here is the finished part of that. Again, on the left side and the right side, it kind of looks out of proportion now. But we'll figure out something to do with that with some sort of design or something to make it look a little bit better. Here is the back side with that new garage door opening, 10 by 10. A couple windows are going to be going in there, a couple 36-inch by, I want to say, 60 or something like that, inch windows or something. So now the roofers have showed up. We're done with the sheathing. Next day they came in, and I mean, they knocked it out super fast. Miss Maintenance got a little bit of footage of them back here working on the backside. And then by that time I ended up getting home from doing my work. I started doing all the window flashing. You can kind of see me and Miss Maintenance over there on the right side working on that, because I've got the 2 front windows. I don't have that big one, so I'm going to go ahead and get those put in just to help with, again, in case some rain comes blowing into the side. So that's what I'm putting in here. Miss Maintenance is helping me with that while the roofers are up there doing their thing. It's pretty interesting to watch them on the time lapse here in a minute. They're taking a little bit of break, but watching roofers work on a time lapse it's actually pretty neat. I got a phone call from a customer, so Miss Maintenance is finishing it up while I'm talking, but then I come back and finish zip taping around the windows that I've got installed. And then we'll just let the roofers pretty much finish us out. So here's where we are now. Here's the back sides of it with the roof on, all the little roof vents up there, and then there is the front side of the roof. So that was the process to get us to this point. As you can see right here, I have a garage door and a man door. Those are the same exact doors that were on my existing red building. They weren't moved, anything like that. They're in the same exact spot. The red building kind of ended here and probably like right here. Now I have those 2 new sections, which I'll show you in a little bit, and how I plan to use those. A lot of people are thinking, well, now you're going to tear down your red building, all that stuff in there, and kind of open this up. That is 100% not my plan because of what I do. And then I did add this little porch feature. So I will be bringing in a soffit, some can lights. I've got my power and stuff up there. That's going to keep the rainwater from hitting on my doors now like it used to as well. So I think that's going to be really helpful. But then as we turn around this corner over here, so instead of having a 20 by 20, I now have a 30 across the front, and this is roughly 40 foot from front to back here. If we go around to this side, you can now see I have a back section with a 10 by 10 garage door. My front garage door is not very big as far as height and all those kinds of things. I'm planning on putting my enclosed trailer in here and storing it in here. So that bigger opening is going to allow me to do that. And then I will also be able to pull my truck in here if I need to work on it, pull other vehicles, whatever I need to do. I still do need to do a concrete apron. That's going to be in the future. I wanted to wait till I got done. And then the garage door I have on order, I don't have that, and I'm also missing a 6-foot window right here. So that's the only thing I'm missing from being like 100% dried in, as far as no weather or anything like that being able to get into here. So now if we come into this space, this building right here is roughly 16. It's more like 15 after the inside of the block, so 15 by 30. Again, my enclosed trailer will park pretty much in one quadrant of it, and then the rest of it will just be extra space for me to work out of, for me to do different things, whether it's work on my lawnmower, build somebody a table. I'll just have more room down here, and I won't have to clog up my work area as far as where I keep my work supplies and all that kind of stuff. Now I will be able to keep some bigger stuff down here because this has much taller ceilings. That block wall right there is 48 inches all the way around, and then I have 8-foot studs, so I pretty much come out to about a 12-foot ceiling up here on the top. So I will also be able to store some stuff up on the top if I want to. I still haven't decided what I'm going to do for finishes or anything like that. I just want to get this thing weathered in and get the siding and all that kind of stuff on. Here you can still see my old red building on the inside. Again, I'm not going to tear down that building. I like the way it is. I will be taking out like this window and all that kind of stuff here, and kind of just to get rid of that so that I can't see through to the other one and stuff like that. Now over here on this side, you'll notice here is one of those new side sections. Well, I've got it studded off right here. My intent is I won't be able to get to that from this new section of the building. I'm going to get to this section from my old building, which I will take down a set of shelves that I have in there that you can see here with all my hardware and all that kind of stuff on there. And that is essentially going to come out to in between the two poles on this one. I have a screw here and a screw here. So I'm going to cut a doorway from the inside of my building where those shelves were to right here. That's what's going to allow me to access this section of the new building. So I'll basically have a big closet, a 20-foot long closet. I can build some 1-foot shelves out, keep totes and stuff like that on there. And then I also have a lot of room up here above my old building where I have the scissor trusses that are spanning over top of the old building, where I can maybe build some cubbies and stuff like that up in here as well. Again, I have no idea what the finished product is yet. I'll still be determining that, but this section right here is essentially going to be storage for my existing building. But then if we move back out and we move on down to this side, you can see I cut into the block here, poured my concrete into the block, and this section right here will be a section that is off of this newer section of the building with the garage door, so that I'll have some extra storage for this space as well. And again, I still have lots and lots of room up above my old building where those scissor trusses are, that I can probably build some cubbies up there as well. I'll probably, again, get rid of that window and do something different. Then I left this little chase right here. Let me shine a light. I got a little bit of room between my old building and the block wall. That is where I'm going to run my mini split for that section. I'll be putting it in my old building, probably up in this area, running the mini split out through that little chase, probably build a little false wall inside of there, and then set my mini split outdoor unit kind of right here in this general area, because that was one of the key reasons why I was doing this addition. One is Miss Maintenance wanted it to look more like the house, so that's why I've got a shingle roof. So if we go on around the other side and look at it from the outside, I've got the black shingle roof. That's what we have in our house, the same exact shingle, same exact color. That's also going to help with sound in my older building. Now I don't have that metal roof, so whenever it's raining, if I want to come out and shoot a video for a tool review or something like that, I'll be able to do that. But then also now I ran more power out here, dug a ditch. I'll be able to have a mini split, have a little bit more opportunities to even add more equipment if I want to. But overall, the building is going to look more like the house, which is what Miss Maintenance wanted. I'm going to get some temperature control in the space where I'm working and filming videos, which is really going to be super nice. And then I'm also going to get some sound control as well. So overall for my YouTube, this is going to be a whole lot better for sure. But then I'm going to also get more space for my actual job, and more space with a bigger garage door where I can pull my truck in there and work on it. I can pull my skid steer in there and work on it, my lawnmower, anything that's a little bit bigger that I wouldn't have room for in my older building. That is going to be super nice. So I'm really glad to have it. I just wanted to share it with you guys because I know I've tried to in a lot of lives and I haven't been able to because I keep losing signal and it drops out. So I thought I'd go ahead and make a video. I know it's a longer video, but I didn't want to cut out any of the time lapse because I know some people, like, once you see something start in time lapse, you want to see the whole process through. So it's a little bit longer video, but hopefully it was interesting in some way and you guys can now understand how I plan to use this, why I've done what I did, all those kinds of things like that. If you've got any questions, drop that in the comments below. Also, let me know what you think about it. I'm just curious about that as well. As always, I hope this video was interesting. You guys stay safe. Have a blessed day. I'll see you on the next video.